I am elated Chicago Bears fan Brian McDaniel,
And I am Wisconsin transplant Green Bay Packer fan Tony Chesak.
and we
We
are
are
wrong
wrong about
about
sports.
sports. Well, everybody, you'll notice that the lovely and talented Karla is not with us this week, but I decided to import a Packer fan into the chat. And, this way, Packer fan and Bears fans, natural enemies, but we can talk about the Vikings and probably have a pretty good time doing it this week. But Tony, why don't you tell everybody who you are, what you do, and then we'll get to talking a little NFC North football.
Thanks, Brian. Tony Chesak. I'm the executive director of the Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association, lobbying for bars, restaurants, and liquor stores. Father of four, living in Matamidi. Got a year-round tennis player in high school and a starting goalie for Matamidi High School hockey. Brian and I have been good friends for quite a few years, and Brian's firm represents the MLBA at the Capitol during fun and not so much fun times. So that's how I got here.
Tell everybody what your Wisconsin credentials are.
Born in Milwaukee, legitimately born in Milwaukee, St. Joseph's Hospital. You have to justify that with a hospital, apparently, when you're born in Milwaukee or Chicago. Lived there until about 1976. Parents moved to Jackson, Wisconsin, where I went to Jackson Elementary School, and then ended up at West Bend East High School. Go Suns! Left Wisconsin, UW Milwaukee, played tennis there for a year, transferred down to Texas, played tennis down in Texas for 4 years, dropped out, moved to Germany, tried my hand at professional tennis, moved back to Minnesota in 98 and met a White Bear Lake girl. And here I am, never to leave again.
Wunderbar. So very cool. All right. Let's get to the sports. So I'm going to start off talking about not just the NFC North leading Chicago Bears. I'm going to talk about the NFC number one seed Chicago Bears, and I'm going to talk about it this week because it's probably going to be the only week that that's true. But the Bears surprised the hell out of me, and I'm suspecting most people by going into Philadelphia this weekend and manhandling the Philadelphia Eagles on Friday for the Black Friday game. The Eagles were wearing their black uniforms, and it was apropos because it became a little bit of a funeral. I have been very tempered in my enthusiasm for the Bears because we've all been here before. They were beating teams, in spectacular fashion in as far as late season comebacks, late game comebacks, but they were beating teams that they should beat. And but the last 2 weeks they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, albeit without Aaron Rodgers, and then this week they played just a very complete game, offense and defense. But the most spectacular stat was that they had well over 250 yards rushing the ball. Both Kyle Monangai and DeAndre Swift they had 130 and 125 yards respectively. And the defense, who has been like last week, the top three cornerbacks were out. Last week, their top three linebackers were out. This week, they got two of their cornerbacks back. They're still waiting for the linebackers to come back. But Dennis Allen, their defensive coordinator, has been putting it together with bubble gum and Flex Seal, and it has been holding. And then this week they had a great week. They figured out the tush push. They sent Nahshon Wright around the corner, and he ripped the ball out of the hands of Jalen Hurts. And I wonder if that's going to be the blueprint going forward. But yeah, the Bears go into Philadelphia. They won 24-15. We had a family friend who was at the game, and she said, all the talk about how awful the Philadelphia Eagle fans were, she says, only toward their own team. She said that they were very nice to her and her family, but that they were booing the Eagles almost from the time that the Eagles stepped off the bus. So with the Packer fan here, who's kind of turning, Bears play the Packers next week or this upcoming week, and then they get them again 2 weeks after that. Um, the Packers are still the adults in the room, but what's the Packer fans' thought on how real the Bears are?
I We can talk about the Bears later. That's fine. Let's talk about the Packers for a little while. I too am tempered. The Packers started off the season mediocre. I think they've been mediocre all season. They had a nice win against the Lions on Thanksgiving. I thought that was a well orchestrated win. We're still down a couple players. Quay Walker's still out. We've got some, picking up who we picked up in the off season. Sure disrupted a lot of Cowboy fans, but Mike has been all that he's been paid to do. And I think that the Packers haven't had a real put together defense in a long time. And in being 55 years old and a Packer fan my entire life, I've never seen other than Reggie White. And I don't remember what they paid for Reggie White back in the day. Whatever they paid for Reggie wasn't enough. God rest his soul. And for Mike, it seems like they're paying him enough to be here. And I'm glad he's here. But we've had a hell of a defense too. And I think the last few weeks, when you get this deep into the season, with Jordan Love being, I'm just going to call him an above average quarterback. He's definitely not an elite status. I think it took Caleb a year to kind of you know, get some traction off those tires a bit to really thoroughly understand the speed of the game. I think Jordan's going to get there. But as I got the Favre jerseys in the background, he's no gunslinger, but they sure take a lot of chances. And I think they've given him a lot of rope to extend himself on plays. I think the Packers are going to be good. I think this weekend will be a big, big, big game for I think the Lions was a benchmark game for them to at least believe that they can beat top tier teams. This rivalry is a different rivalry, folks, and it's a completely different mindset. We had rivalry weekend all weekend for college football, and A&M's goal every year is to beat UT. UT's goal every year is to beat A&M, and everything else kind of comes after that. Same with Packer fans and Bear fans. If there's one game, you're two games on the schedule you're circling every single season, and those are those games. Are the Bears legit? I don't think they're giving enough credit. I know that artificially inflating the Bears on this, but ESPN doesn't have them even winning the division. This morning it was like a 64% or 67% chance ESPN's got the Packers to win the NFC North. And Bears like a double digit, like 20% or 15%, whatever it was. I don't understand those stats. And no, I don't understand what the prognosticators are looking at because I think the Bears are legit. They've been legit. They've been damaged a couple times this season with some injuries, but they're putting it together. And this late in the season, with baseball, with hockey, with football, you get to figure shit out. You get to figure teams out and what they and who they are. And I think the Bears defense has been good enough that they're starting to figure out other teams' schemes and making a couple of nuanced changes. I think the Bears are legit. I think the Packers are having a hell of a time going to beat them once or twice going into the end of the season here. I think the Packers have a brutal schedule because they've kind of stacked all their their conference games now. I think 5 of the last 7 games are NFC North Conference games, which I'd sure like to get those out of the way early in the season, but could work out to our benefit, could work out to our detriment. But the Bears are legit. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, I think that what we're finding out too is that coaching makes a big difference. The Bears got Dennis Allen, former Saints and Raiders coach, coaching the defense, and they got Ben Johnson, who it has been elevated to in Chicago. You got the Pope, and slightly above the Pope, you got Ben Johnson. He is the real man of the people in Chicago. So I mean, I think we're seeing that that we're going to have a competent offense, and the defense has been doing the best they can, even when they get torched. It's kind of hard to blame them because they've been so banged up. But it's kind of an any given Sunday situation when you're talking about most division games, but certainly NFC North, because you kind of look. We got to talk a little bit about the Lions. On Thanksgiving, they tried their best, but they were no match for the Packers. But you kind of look at the Vikings, who now are they won 4 games. They might not win another game the rest of the year the way their quarterback situation is. But you kind of look at them and say, well, how did they beat the Bears the first week? Well, the Bears probably beat themselves. But remember, the Vikings laid the wood to the Lions in Detroit. And you kind of just wonder, how does that happen? Now I can't remember. I think when they played him, I think Wentz was quarterbacking, and he was at least competent before they broke him in half. But woo, the Max Brosmer experience this weekend in Seattle. Got to feel bad for the guy, former Gopher quarterback, just was put in a terrible position and played terribly. And then my social media feed is just full of all these national guys just kind of wondering, why was JJ McCarthy not just drafted in the first round? Why was he ever allowed to hold a football? Because he's the worst quarterback anyone's ever seen.
Well,
I think
now too, Brian, they're showing all the tapes of him in the combine of all the throws he's throwing above guys' heads, below guys' feet. And it seems, and I always, a true test of character, when you're putting in Malik Willis for the Packers and he's serviceable for when they need him for. Could he start a game? Sure. I've always thought that Malik is hanging out here in Green Bay. I don't know why. I think he's a good enough backup quarterback. Put him in a position for the Vikings. I'm not sure if they can put any quarterback in that position with the Vikings at this point in time. When you take a team and you lose your marquee quarterback, guys played 4 games coming into the season, and you're making him that guy. They look pretty stupid with Sam Darnold not being there at this point in time. When you take a team and you take the one component out of a quarterback and the team cannot produce on offense and the defense can't support, that says something about the team in general. And Brian and I were talking, I think last week it was KOC. I think most players would love to play for KOC. He's been that kind of he was a good player. He was a team player, and he's a team coach, and the players love him. I think there's some leadership change that the Vikings have to make some decisions on as far as depth on the roster. But when you take a player out of that scheme and insert a backup, and there's no production, it's not all in the quarterback's head. I mean, you're right. I would have loved to be at US Bank and listen to the vibe and the vibration through the stadium when when he got called out. I mean, the stadium had to have been just electric with people just screaming that Brosmer's getting in, and I think that would have been fun to see, but it definitely didn't interpret. And early in the game, the social media is like, okay, we got a winner, he's our guy, and then all of a sudden it just went south again. So
well, yeah, I was gonna say, what they did to Brosmer was not fair because even the whole week leading up, they're like, okay, well, he's gonna be Brock Purdy. He's gonna be the guy that no one thought could do anything. He's gonna come in, he's gonna look great. And that was never gonna happen. He was only a pretty good or kind of good college quarterback. And to put him with a team with a banged up O line just wasn't fair. The Seattle defense is great. They were in Seattle, all that stuff. But I think that the real problem that the Vikings are going to have is just the look on Justin Jefferson's face. Well, he had 2 catches for 4 yards. And, if they are going to waste, he's probably the best wide receiver in the league, maybe Jamar Chase, I don't know. But you get him a good quarterback, you get him an okay quarterback, and he goes lights out. Remember, at the end of last year, there was a revolving door of quarterbacks, and Jefferson was fine. But he and Addison are just not getting fed right now. And then when you do throw it to Addison, he drops it. So it's pretty pathetic. I mean, I'm a jerk. So when the Vikings lose, I love to drive around in the car and listen to K-Fan and just listen to everybody lose their minds. But yeah, no, it's kind of sad because KOC is supposed to be the quarterback whisperer, and maybe it's unfair to say that McCarthy is supposed to be great, but he should be playable.
Yeah, but
And
you put JJ in a situation where he's on the sideline 2.5 hours before the game, and ESPN's recording him meditating, and he's calling himself number 9. Just let everybody know, if you give yourself a nickname, somebody should come to you and kick you, because you don't give yourself a nickname. He's given himself the number 9 nickname, and I get the vibrato behind it. I understand what he's trying to do, and the team's allowing him to be who he wants to be. But you know what? when Rodgers is in what deprivation light therapy, wherever the hell he's proven he's got the credentials to talk whatever he wants to say what he's done because he's got a ring and he's probably one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. So when you're in a situation where they continue to allow JJ to be JJ, I don't think it's helpful for his mental health. I don't think it's healthy for his playability. I don't know what his contract says he's around for, but if things don't shape up now in the remainder of the season, because if he does get healthy, they have to put him in. They can't just sit him on the sideline, let Max throw that ball and do the best he can do. He's no Brock Purdy, you're right. And they're going to have to put JJ in. And it's a lot of times in sports, you take a player and you either allow them to expose them, get exposed, or expose themselves. And right now he's getting exposed, but you have to let him. He's a professional athlete being paid millions of dollars to do this. You have to let him do that.
Well, I don't know that you should be saying expose themselves with all ththose Favre jerseys behind you.
It's a solid point. I didn't think that through before I made that cut. I used to get my hair cut at a barber shop in Milwaukee, and he used to cut Favre's hair and Shermura's hair. No lie, hand to God, true story. He'd cut me every time. He'd straight razor around the neck and the ears. He'd cut me every time. But the stories he would tell were legendary of all the things that happened, the indiscretions back in the day when those Polaroid cameras and nobody seemed to care.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So right now, got the Bears at 9-3 atop the division. You got the Packers in second at what 8-3-1.
8-3-1, yeah.
8-3-1. Then you got the Lions, who are all of a sudden looking a little discombobulated. They got some injury issues. Amon-Ra St. Brown went out early in that game. They're at 7-5. Vikings are 4-8. They might finish. They might win one more game. Who knows if they can make that happen? They got Washington at home next week. But right now, I think the division is it's going to be what happens in those two Bear Packer games. They're in Lambeau this week. Then the Bears, I think, play Detroit.
Yep.
Maybe not Detroit, but then they play another team, and then they go have the Packers down in Soldier Field. But at the beginning of the year, I would have penciled those in for 2 losses, but they split with them last year. I think they're going to split with them this year. And but you mentioned Micah Parsons, him and Edger and Cooper, and the Packer defense is very legit. And the Bears offensive line has been playing great. They got 3 new guys in that they brought in through free agency. They've been drafting pretty decently, and they've been opening up holes and protecting Caleb. Caleb Williams has gone from the most sacked quarterback to one of the least sacked quarterback, and he doesn't turn the ball over very often.
The Packers haven't proven they can stop the run efficiently enough yet either. So if the O-line gets rolling for Chicago, and they start running the ball, it's going to be a long day for the Packers because the Packers' MO has been all season. It's no secret. Get up early so you have to throw the ball. And then you can pin the ears back on Parsons and Rashawn Gary and let those guys come around the end and wreak havoc in the backfield. That's been the MO of the Packers. That's the sole purpose of getting Parsons was that reason, to inflate the offense enough to get points on the board and then come in afterwards. And you're just running after a quarterback, and your D-backs are holding it line. And the defensive backfield for Green Bay has been good this year, but stopping the run I think is going to be critical for the next game. Because when you look at the Bears' schedule, they've got Green Bay, the Browns, and back in Green Bay, and then the Niners, and then the Lions. If they handle the Packers this weekend, they've got a chance to run this whole thing through. Because I think they can beat the Niners. That's obvious. And the Lions, if they're the shell of the Lions used to be, if the Lions have something to play for, they're going to be good enough to compete. But the Bears have a shot to run the table if they do take care of the Packers this weekend in Lambeau. I'm not sure what the weather's going to be like. It's going to be a factor for sure. It'll probably be cold. I'm not sure about the snow and everything else that goes on there. But I was at the Packer game when they played the Panthers and just watched them get dismantled. And it was just a pathetic game to watch. So I'm big on the Bears this year. I told you during the season, I think you're going to get a hell of a team. As much as I can't stand their success, you have to legitimize the fact that they're a good football team and they're making a run. And the greatest day ever for the Bears fans is they're flying below the radar. Nobody's picking them. And by the way, folks, the Bears love being in this position. You never want to be that team that everybody's saying you're going to win the division, because the Lions had that that cross on their back for all for this entire season, and now they're starting to show some dings in their armor. And because of that reason, I think it's a lot of weight to carry through an entire season. So I think the Bears are in a really good position to be kind of the underdogs in a way. I'm not sure what the line is, what the Vegas line is this weekend. Have you guys checked on that? I haven't checked on the line.
I haven't looked on it yet. I would assume that certainly since it's at home, I bet you the Packers are probably a 4 or 5 point favorite, which would seem about right. Um, so in the NFC, I think for the final games, if the Bears can win 2 of them, that gets them 11 wins. That's a playoff team, which is
Right.
more than I expected from them. It'd be great to win the division, obviously, maybe get a bye, but I just don't think that they're going to be able to do that. But you start looking at the NFC, and then we'll talk very briefly about the AFC. You got the Rams, who were in the number 1 seed. They lost to Carolina this week. You got the Eagles, who we just talked about. They're floundering. Seattle, I mean, they whooped the Vikings, but they didn't look great. Darnold didn't look great. They won because they kicked a bunch of field goals, and the Vikings kept throwing the ball to them. And then you kind of, Tampa Bay, no, not really. So in the NFC, then you got the Packers and the Bears and maybe the Lions. Those are a gaggle of good teams, maybe not a great team. And then over in the AFC, once again, I mean, the Chiefs they're in danger of not making the playoffs. They
Right.
lost again this week. The Bills didn't look great against the Steelers, though they did win. And you kind of look at the AFC going, well, what, Denver? I mean, you kind of look over there, and I think that whoever comes out of the NFC has to be feeling pretty good, unless the Chiefs kind of sneak their way in. And then I guess Buffalo is who I predicted at the beginning of the year, but they've been a little hit and miss lately. So, we're actually it'll be nice not to have another Super Bowl that's Chiefs Eagles, which I just hope it's not.
Well, and I too I picked the Bills to win the AFC too. But I'm looking at, I mean, watching the Rams, I still it the prog the guys that pick these games ebb and flow so much from week to week, and I really think the Rams are a complete team. I think it's one of the most complete teams I've seen in a long time. Um, Everybody just hopes the Chiefs lose to a certain extent, other than my wife, who hopes that she can see Taylor Swift in the stands. So whenever the Chiefs are on, she stops for about 5 minutes. And if somebody Kelsey makes a play, then she's waiting. If she's not in the stadium, then she doesn't watch the game any longer. I think they're good enough, and I think they're talented enough still to compete. But I still like. I mean, the Rams coming out of the. I think the Rams are going to be a team that definitely going to have to deal with. No team this year has set themselves apart from any other team. And the Lions had that chance. The Rams had that chance. Other teams have had that. The Bills have had that chance this season, where everybody's on board with that team for a hot minute. But then again, week 3, week 4, the Packers were predicted to win the whole. I mean, so I love for some reason this year. I'm not playing fantasy football this year. The first time I haven't played fantasy in a long time, and I'm watching the games just pure enjoyment, not worried about who's going to win or lose or what players on the team. But it's one of the most competitive seasons I think I've seen in a very long time in the NFL from top to bottom. No one's separating themselves. No one's the dominant team right now. There's glimpses of teams being great. But I think in the end, you're right. It'd be nice to finally watch a Super Bowl where there's some teams where you haven't seen these teams in a hot minute.
Yeah.
My prediction was always the fact that I thought the Vikings would get to the Super Bowl before the Packers would ever get back there. Then there was just more insulating my delicate psyche with being a Packer fan. Definitely not going to happen this season, but I think it'd be fun to come down to the NFC. If it comes down to it, an NFC Championship, it'd be nice to see 2 really big teams. Like, it'd be nice to see the black and blue division come through with a couple teams and win this whole thing. That'd be fun.
That would be great. Now, one thing I had a couple different motives for having you on. You're my buddy. You're my pal. You're my favorite Packer fan because I can't stand almost all of them other than you. But also we do work together. And I was on a political program this weekend, and they brought up what's happening on the federal level with hemp beverages and other connected equipment. Uh, uh, And so it's something that is a big deal. It's a big deal to your members, but it's going to be a big deal to not just retailers, but also who's manufacturing them and everything along the line. I wanted to bring you on to talk a little bit about what impact, what happened at the federal level, and then what's going to be the impact of the industry and retailers.
Well, to keep it somewhat interesting of a conversation, because you can get in the weeds on this, forgive the pun, but you can get in the weeds on these conversations. You can lose people, lose the traction because there's a lot of nuances to it. Farm bill passed in 2018, which allowed hemp production. Um, One of my favorite stories is I'm 17, 18 years old. I'm just punching myself in the head on this one. I'm downstairs in my parents' basement and I'm looking through my dad's tool chest, looking for a tool item. I had like a 1972 or 74 Opel Sport Coupe was the first car that I bought myself in 1984, 85, when I turned 16 in 1986. And I'm looking at my dad's tool chest, and the bottom of the tool chest that I've got in my house right now was a film container. Now, if you're old as I am, you understand what's in a film container. So I shook the film container. I'm going, oh, I remember those days when my dad was younger and my mom allowed him to have some fun. Open up the film container. What was inside of it? Exactly what I thought was inside of it: marijuana. So, as I was, me and some friends partook in that in that substance, and nothing happened. Tried it day two, nothing happened, no effect. I'll come to find out about 30 years later, I talked to my dad about this because I was too embarrassed to talk about when I was in my teens. But in my early 40s, I talked to my dad, hey, Dad, by the way, I'm in your toolbox. He goes, well, you dumbass, that was hemp. My entire life, I thought that hemp was just hemp. You made clothing out of it, you made paper out of it, you made other textiles, ropes, and things. Cheap to grow, very hardy, grows in Minnesota and other climates that are difficult to grow in. But then come to find out years later that you could extract THC from a hemp plant. I didn't know. And when it became legal in Minnesota in the 2022-2023 bill that legalized recreational cannabis, they forgot the liquor stores because there's certain laws in Minnesota that allow liquor stores to sell certain things, the grocery stores to sell certain things, and never the two shall mix. And as a result of that, hemp-derived THC became a thing in Minnesota. And then the government shutdown happens. Part of that reopening bill was to basically make make intoxicating hemp illegal to a 0.4%, zero point 0.4 milligrams. And right now, 5 milligrams per dose or per serving is the recommended amount that the state of Minnesota allows to be sold. So we came on board as liquor stores. Over 75% of all sales of hemp-derived THC beverages are sold through liquor stores. So we're the number one distribution point for that sale. And then in a year from now, sometime on November 12th, it'll be illegal. And what people are typically not understanding, it's not November of 2026 that's the problem, is when you have to put those seeds in the ground for a new crop around Mother's Day of 2026. And if it's not going to be legal, if the forecast isn't going to say, hey, this is going to be legal by the time the negotiations end or start in November of 2026, there will be no seeds in the ground to grow this hemp product to extract this type of THC from the plant to be sold. So as of right now, when the bill was first drafted, it was drafted poorly, in my estimation. I have a 13-year-old son. The bill, as drafted initially, would allow my 13-year-old son and his nitwit buddy Garrett down the road to sell hemp-derived THC gummies that they could make on their own, legally make on their own. They could sell them on their own as 13-year-old children, and they could consume them as 13-year-old children. That's how the initial bill was drafted. So we had to make some changes. And I thought we made some phenomenal changes. We asked for regulation, knowing that one day recreational cannabis becomes a thing. We then could say, hey, let's be like them. We're going to take these regulations on. It's an intoxicating product. It's a controlled substance. We want to make ourselves look and feel like this is something that we can control. And we did. Got to be 21 to buy it. Got to be 18 to sell it. Got to be showing obvious signs of impairment or intoxication to be sold to somebody that maybe shows obvious signs of intoxication or impairment. We've taken these things, testing, batch numbers, all these things have to go on the can or the package of these products. And we are by far regulating them at a higher level than any other state in the nation's regulating them at. So we believe our model in Minnesota that we all kind of took apart and to help draft these regulations are good enough for not only Minnesota, but for the nation to feed off that same plate. So as a result, it's been widely successful. Every transaction, you have to card for the transaction, unlike alcohol. There's no carding policy in Minnesota for carding. If a 98-year-old woman walks into a liquor store, that liquor store does not have to legally card her. But for these hemp products, she's 21 or 101, that customer has to get carded for every transaction. So we're above board on regulation. We feel we've done a really good job setting the table for future legislation to change in other states to adopt those laws. And for the first time in my life that I've been lobbying here at the MLBA for almost 25 years, this is at a different level of lobbying. This is have to be lobbied at the federal level, and we typically, as an association, don't always get involved in big federal issues going to DC to lobby. But now we got to pack our bags and go to Washington DC, talk to the delegation. And thus far, the Democrats have taken on the task. On the show this weekend, Brian, I saw it. Congratulations! It was a really well done program. You mentioned the fact that the Republicans aren't at the table. Now, if that was by design or lack of effort, I don't know. But the folks that you've talked to and I've talked to gently about it are very supportive of the small business industry. It's a $30 billion industry, 300 million in the state of Minnesota, with a large producer of hemp-derived THC beverages in the nation. And I think we're doing it the right way. It just depends on how this can get lobbied at the federal level. I've got what are your counterpart on the show on the show on yesterday was I understand cautiously optimistic, but he made a comment of, and I feel the same way. The framework that we've been developed here in Minnesota, I think we can take that onto the national level, and everybody can kind of see how we're doing it, and we're taking this seriously and responsibly. So I think we're going to kill this thing. I think we're going to make this thing happen before too long, so people can kind of get back to their businesses, back to breathing a little bit, and kind of growing this sector of the industry that's been pretty wildly successful the last couple of years that it's been here.
Well, and why it's a big deal is because one, retailers sell a lot of it. They sell a lot of it because it's what the people want. So if you are somebody who enjoys a hemp derived THC beverage every once in a while, this is something to keep your eye on. Listen to this show. Listen to Wrong About Everything. Follow us on social media. And when the time is right, we're going to try to mobilize you and get you talking to your Congress people, because they need to know that the people that not only just sell it, but the people who actually enjoy it are going to be peeved that this.
One more thing, Brian. We've taken it on. We've taken it from when we found out that Monday morning or whatever it was that this thing is this bill is going to go through the House and the Senate, and it was going to be illegal in a year. We activated the membership right away. We've got close to 1,000 people that have activated on our voter voice page that have contacted folks in DC. And it's not just the retailers that we sent this out to. They've then taken that voter voice link and pass it on to their customers. So the customers are starting to engage their DC delegates. And that's what's really going to drive this agenda. Small business has been somewhat forgotten about in certain situations. And I know people do or don't care about that. But when the customer base gets loud and says, wait a minute, I'm 35 years old. I've been enjoying this product now for a year and a half safely. You got to continue to keep this going, keep this kind of flow of product coming our way. I think that's what's going to really help in the long run. So yeah, thanks for the plug. Appreciate that, Brian.
Well, and I thank you for stepping in and pinch hitting for Karla. We are at time, but I am elated, as I said, Chicago Bear fan, and in the words of our fearless leader Ben Johnson, good, better, best. Never let it rest. Your good is better, and your better is best. Bear down, the Bears. Brian McDaniel.
I'm Tony Chesak. 13 world championships. Burden on my shoulder is heavy. I apologize for all of you that don't have one. But thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate the time.
All right. Well, thank you, Gabe Noah. And with that, this has been Wrong About Sports. Have a great week, everybody.
MBC. No relation to NBC.